Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast explores the transition to net zero and the systems driving real change in how we move, live and power our world. Every week I sit down with the people leading that change, those offering insight, innovation and impact in many ways people don't fully see until they hear their stories. If you're ready for real conversations that inspire action and drive change, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and join us on this journey, and let's cut through the noise and build a better future together. So today I have with me Jade Edwards, and she is Head of Insights at Zapmap. Jade, thank you for joining me on this. It's absolutely lovely to finally properly get to meet you rather than just dashing in and out and saying hi at events.
Hi Liz, yeah, nice to meet you too properly. We've done many hugs, but just very quick. Hi, hug, hi, bye.
It's mad, isn't it? You know, and there is a joke that goes on about Michelle, who works with me, and Neil Riddle, and I kept forgetting if they'd met, and they just take the pee out of me now because they pretend that they've not met, but they have loads of times, and I just kept forgetting. So anyway, lovely to see you on here. Thank you again. Let's talk a little bit about you and Zapmap and what you kind of did before you came to Zapmap, because your background was quite specific in order, you know, and it works really nicely with what you're doing now, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So I joined Zapmap in April 2022. I was coming back from mat leave after having my second daughter, and I was looking for a new challenge. And I'd been working at a data and insights agency for about 12 years before that, but it was on the insurance side of the world. Mm-hmm. So general insurance, home insurance, car insurance, and it was basically looking at all the data in the industry on the pricing of insurance and then packaging that up and selling that back out into the industry. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'd been doing, and I'd seen it from every angle really over those 12 years. I'd done the sales, I'd started in the operational piece of all the data collection and the quality processes and then creating all the reports. I'd then done the sales piece, I'd done some of the marketing, kind of the marketing and the product side of things. So I'd seen all these different bits, and I really wanted something that was going to bring it together, but in a business that had more kind of purpose about it. So I really wanted to move into something that I felt was really making a difference in the world. So I'd been looking at loads of different kinds of things. And then I got the call about Zapmap, and I didn't know anything about electric vehicles. So an agency spoke to me, and I said, I don't know anything about electric vehicles. I just know they're the future. I just know instinctively that's the way things are going to go. And I think it's the right way. It's just I didn't know anything about them at that stage. And they said, well, trust me, if you knew anything about electric vehicles, you'd know Zapmap. They're a market leader in what they do, you know, etc., etc. And I thought, yeah, okay, yeah, you give me the sell now. And then I met Mel and I met Ben, who's co-founder with Mel. Had some conversations and thought this sounds like a fantastic opportunity. It's exactly hitting the sweet spot of all the things I wanted to do. Really keen, but I still didn't understand quite the impact that Zapmap had. And then when I joined and then started getting into it, I was like, wow. They were not, the agency was not making this up. Like, they really do have such a huge impact, and then I felt so privileged to be able to be part of that and be part of the journey going forwards.
And you were saying to me, weren't you, before we started recording, that Mel needed, she realised that insights were needed, and she was kind of doing all of this herself. And you know, I was saying to you that running a small business, you do end up doing lots of stuff, as I can tell you, you know, and actually getting her recognising and being able to bring you in kind of spurred on so many things from there, didn't it?
Yeah, so she'd recognised from the start of Zapmap really that as well as providing the data to EV drivers and that being hugely important, it was also hugely important to provide the data and the insight into the industry and be able to do that thought leadership, and support the growth of the industry overall. That it was kind of two sides of the same coin. You've got to support the EV drivers, but you've got to support the CPOs and all the companies that work around them to help make it happen and make that transition happen. So yeah, recognising that was just amazing in my view, and really forward thinking. So yeah, it was great for me to come in and go, right, okay, we've got a springboard here, we've got some stuff already started, and now I can make it my own and help grow the business.
So tell me a little bit about what you and the Insights team are providing. You know, because you're involved in a lot of different things, aren't you? But kind of, so I mean, there might be people who don't really know much, like you did. You know, don't really know much about Zapmap. Do you want to just kind of go back a second and just give a little bit of an explanation about, you know, kind of what Zapmap actually was set up to do, and then what bit you do?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so Zapmap is the UK's leading EV charging platform. So it's set up as an app to help EV drivers charge with confidence when they're out and about, essentially. So we bring in data from every CPO that we possibly can do. So whether that's a really large charge point operator like Tesla, or whether it's, you know, tiny, someone who's got a few garden centres, we try and bring that data in from absolutely everyone we can, so that EV drivers have got the full spectrum within Zapmap, of all the different charging options. So we serve that up to EV drivers. The app really helps people when they're out and about. But then equally, the other side of the business is taking the data and saying, well, what can you do with that that's more of a B2B context, or how can you help industry with that data? And that's my side of the business, where we're looking at, okay, how can we package it all up, and how can we provide that back to charge point operators so they can understand their position within the market and how their competitors are doing, how they're doing, and what opportunities they be looking for, how could they be better serving their customers. We also package that up for the government, and for local authorities, subnational transport bodies, people like that, so that they can understand what does the sort of industry look like overall, and how is it growing and developing over time. And then we also work with, say, the media. So we're always trying to get the facts out into the media, try and counter misinformation, and put out the really positive stories about actually how things are growing and shaping, and what that means for EV drivers now and for the EV drivers of the future.
Because it was interesting, wasn't it, when, you know, kind of the information that you provide with regards to kind of like the number of chargers. So I think when you put your last report out, I'm just looking at it now. So you had 82,000. 369 chargers over 40,479 locations, which is huge. But that's not the end of it, is it really? Because, you know, it isn't until we look at all of the kind of the other the other areas with regards to home charging and everywhere like that, that actually the whole picture, and I know that that's what Charge UK have kind of been looking at as well, isn't it? The overall number of workplace charging and everything else. To counter that level of misinformation that's out there, when people kind of go, there aren't any chargers, there's no infrastructure, just because it looks a little bit different doesn't mean it's not there. It's kind of that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely that. And as we focus, you know, really focus on the public charging network, but yeah, you need to take into account that is a piece of the puzzle. That is the beauty of charging an electric car, is that for a lot of people, you can do that at home. You could do that at work, as well as going to somewhere that is dedicated to actually charging it publicly. So yeah, it's that whole picture, and that's what we're constantly trying to help to get that out there. And we've worked with, you know, some really great journalists on various different projects to be able to share that sort of information. And it's just, to us, it's really, really important that we keep fighting the good fight, keep getting the data out there, and start to see these more positive stories, of which, you know, we've had some great ones in just the last week around the additional funding and measures that are being put in by the government. So it's good to see some of those kind of mainstream media stories breaking through, as well as not just industry stories, which is really good.
Yeah, and giving consumers that ability to actually, you know, I know it's not perfect, but to be able to put, you know, have a grant to go towards an EV. I know it's not necessarily used EVs, but you know there will be people who kind of will utilize that grant, and you know, and the
Yeah, I
OEMs
mean,
and the dealerships.
it starts with a new vehicle, doesn't it? That's got to come in, you know, as the first point, and then it can become the used vehicles and develop those sales as well. So I think it's anything that can help to stimulate that and stimulate that demand has got to be a good thing, really. And then we need to work on, okay, what's the next step? So what do we need to do about used vehicles? And certainly that, you know, anything like that, we're constantly getting involved with to go, okay, if we can help in any way in any of these campaigns, we absolutely will do.
And that's brilliant because I was going to say, you know, the used market doesn't just grow overnight. It's not like waving a magic wand or anything. Like you've just said, it comes in new and then it goes down through, you know, various kind of used channels, doesn't it? After that, and a lot of people who are driving around in cars these days, you know, they're not driving new cars. I was saying to somebody else today, we didn't buy a new EV, but we, you know, and we were kind of, because ours is a couple of years ago now. It takes time. We were really lucky that we did get what we got, because the ones that we were looking at were just going like hot cakes, as it were. So yeah, it's kind of it, but it's growing, isn't it? As
Yeah.
you go through that 3 year buy-in cycle, especially with kind of cars being bought through businesses and stuff like that. I think it's about 3 or 5, isn't it? You know, then the used market starts growing. But like you say, you know, the number of the charging network is growing so massively, and your insights team are probably, I'm assuming you're able to see lots of kind of trends and things like that in charging anyway.
Yeah, certainly. And so one of the, you know, the big sort of trends that you see at the moment in terms of the pace of rollout is that the hubs, so we define them as 6 or more rapid or ultra rapid devices in one location, so 50 kilowatts plus. The hubs, they're growing at one of the kind of fastest rates out of everything that we see. So we've had 136 new hubs so far this year.
Gosh, yeah.
Um, we also see then specifically those ultra rapid, so 150 kilowatt plus devices, they're the segment that are growing the fastest out of everything. So we've had about 1,600 of those in so
Wow.
far this year, and they now, the total number of ultra rapid devices outnumbers the rapid devices. So that's the first time that's taken over um, in the last couple of months, and it's definitely, you know, for that en route charging, and that's the other great thing about charging. There's different use cases for different, depending on what you're doing, but for that en route charging, that's certainly what the EV drivers are looking for, and the CPOs are absolutely responding to that and getting ahead of that in a lot of cases, to make sure that that's the provision that's going in for people that need to charge en route. So that's a kind of big trend that we've seen developing over the last couple of years.
So were there was there anything that was unexpected, that, you know, like a trend that you kind of started kind of going, oh, that's, we weren't expecting that to happen. Were there any kind of, or behaviours, even kind of trends or behaviours that have taken you by surprise? I'm not saying that you wouldn't be expecting it, but sometimes you can see from your, you know, data is king, as I always say. You know, actually from that data that kind of blew you away.
Yeah, I suppose when you look at on street charging, you know, London, as you can imagine, has the vast majority of the on street devices that there are at the moment in the country. However, when you actually go and look at the growth rate, you really do see that it's outside of London really is a lot of the times where the growth rate is highest, because you have got all those different local authorities around the country that are really starting to try and put in more on-street provision. So yeah, certainly over the last year or so, whenever we look at that split regionally, we go, yeah, London has still got huge numbers of on-street, but all the others are, or not all the others, but a lot of other areas are really starting to pick that up. And starting to try and develop that provision as well. So I think that will now be a kind of continuing trend, I expect, as well. And we did a brilliant piece of work actually with Cenex and Field Dynamics and Experian and various other partners called Are We Nearly There Yet? So I don't know if you've ever had a look at that.
Yeah.
But it's this brilliant analysis looking at every local authority and what's its current provision versus what's the likely need for that local authority and how far ahead or behind demand is it. So it's a really good sort of granular analysis across the country. And that's the sort of thing that we love getting our data into, because our data is one piece of the puzzle. We can talk about the numbers and we can talk about the utilisation of the charges, but what's really great is when you build that data up with other elements. And we try and do that in partnership as much as we can, and our clients do that. They will get our data in and mix it with their own data and other data they've got from other sources to try and build a much richer picture.
And that's what you need, isn't it, in order to kind of move forwards and be able to make decisions to, like you say, pull it in from different places and different types of data to kind of to do this. I mean, not everybody's a data geek, are they? I mean, I do like a good old spreadsheet, as Michelle, who works with me, would probably go, oh God, yeah, she does. I like it. I'm not kind of into kind of pivot tables and all that lot, but I want to be able to see data. And I was talking to my son recently, and I was saying about data needs to be meaningful, doesn't it? Because there's no point in kind of creating reports and running data reports if it's not meaningful to people, because otherwise I don't know whether you've had this, but I've worked at places where they've just run reports for reporting's sake, and it's kind of like, is anybody actually reading that? So that's why it's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's asking the right questions, isn't it? So it's saying, what do we really need to understand about this? What are the decisions we need to make? And therefore, what data do we need to help demonstrate if that's going to be the right decision or not? If we're going to think about, this is our rollout plan, this is where we're going to be putting charges, what data do we need to help us inform that decision and make sure we're making the best decision we can? So yeah, it's all about building those data layers, but it's the questioning that's really, really important.
Yeah, exactly. And I was gonna ask you, so what data do you feel at the moment? It might be one of the ones you've already talked about. What do you feel is proving most valuable at the moment in shaping how EV charging is moving?
Yeah, so I think the two things at the moment that are really helping it are where are all the chargers, and actually what's the makeup of those, what are the power ratings of them, how many are together, who's operating them, all that kind of information about the chargers themselves and where they're sited, because you've got a whole industry looking at how do we develop this network that's going to best serve EV drivers for the future. So you need to understand what's where, the trends that are running through what people are doing and how that's being deployed. So I think that's really key. The other aspect that's really key is understanding how well are those chargers currently being utilised and what does that look like sort of historically. So how has that been building? And how does that change depending on more charger deployment within an area, more deployment on a site, seasonality, how long a charger has been in the ground and what's that ramp up period. So I think all of that data is really, really important, looking at not only a rollout, but then the next phase from as you're rolling chargers out is, well, how are we actually going to maintain this and actually start getting some return on investment? from it, because, you know, this is not a charity.
Yes.
Out there, the public network, these are charge point operators. They got to do a really good job for EV drivers, but they've got to be able to fund that, and they've got to be able to fund that ongoing into the future. So we can't just, you know, have it as it doesn't matter whether they're used or not. It's really important. It's no good for a charge point operator. They don't want their stuff sat there not being used. So that's really important, I think, all that side of it. And then the kind of third area is about, as well as that really kind of definitive data on, you know, these are the number of sessions that are happening, this is exactly where the charges are. There's also that softer data around actually EV driver sentiment. What do the EV drivers of today want and experience, and what do they expect? What are they looking for? And then thinking about what's the next wave of EV drivers going to want and experience. So I think those things together sort of build quite nicely into the key stuff that's kind of most important at the moment, in terms of the data out there for the network as it develops.
It's funny. I was just literally scribbling down before you said what you just said then about consumer experience, because you know that's kind of something that I'm very very interested in. You know, and the kind of the sentiment. What are your thoughts about future EV drivers? Because I have my own thoughts about kind of what we've had previously, because I still think, you know, you've got the really really early adopters. I still think we are kind of like early adopters-ish now. But what are your thoughts about kind of, what do you think, or what are your predictions? I'm not asking you to do a Mystic Meg, you know, get your crystal ball out, but from what you're seeing, what do you think the future EV drivers would be expecting from their own experience, you know, of charging?
They just want it to be simple. I think it's people, you're getting into the realms of people that aren't that interested in cars. They just want the next nice car, and they might be really interested in the environment.
Yeah.
And really they're doing it because they're thinking this is really good for the environment. I'm really happy with my choices here about being more sustainable and helping to provide, you know, get a greener future. So I think you'll have people that are really interested in that. But a lot of them will be, I use my car to get from A to B. I don't really have to think about it much outside of that. And so they just want a simple, straightforward experience. So I think that's the challenge as you go forwards, because they're not as interested in the intricacies and understanding all these differences, and being there to sort of push the boundary. They just want to get on with things. So yeah, that's definitely the challenge, I think, is how we not consolidate, but bring the experience together so that people are, in the vast majority of cases, getting quite a simple experience that they don't have to really think about.
And that's it, isn't it? That is it. What you've just hit the nail on the head. It is about making it so that you don't even have to think about. You don't have to think about. Sorry, I don't like to talk about wet fuel, although I do. But you know, we don't think about it when you just go to a wet fuel station and you whack a nozzle.
People are so just used to it now that they just know that, you know,
Yeah.
they got a couple of different options when they get there. Am I gonna use petrol or diesel? Am I gonna pay at pump or pay in kiosk? I mean, that's about it in terms of the considerations.
Yeah, yeah.
And they still get that wrong. Let's not forget.
Oh well, there is that.
There's still a lot of that you know, people get wrong. So yeah, it's just about that simplicity, and about things like to give people that confidence to switch. Things like the legislation or the announcement's just been made about signage, and actually being able to signpost EV charging from major A roads and motorways without it having to be attached to a fuel forecourt. You know, it sounds so obvious, and people outside the industry probably assume that you could, and why there just aren't any chargers there. That's why nobody's signposted them from anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of thing is just, you know, it's that great visibility and just gives people that confidence if they're suddenly driving round. And you know, if you look on the map, wherever you are, you look on Zapmap, you'll pretty much see chargers. So actually being able to just people driving around and oh, there's another EV charging, oh, there's another EV charging sign, you know, that's going to be transformational, I think.
I agree, and actually, I'll go back to what we were talking about before we started recording, which was you went to BEV's charging oasis, didn't you, in Manchester? And I hadn't properly looked at the photos, and you've got one in the background with you and Asif Ghafoor with a BEV totem, and I was just like, oh my God, you can actually see it's a charging hub. It's got a totem on it, but I know there's lots of laws and things like that were getting in the way and tripping people up before, weren't there, that said if you've got a totem and it's got no room, you can't, you know, there was all sorts of different things that you could or couldn't do to minimise it. But like you're saying, if, you know, the kind of, even just making it, giving people the ability to signpost EV charging and keeping it standardised so you know what it looks like, and then people will start going, oh yeah, look at that over there. Oh, it is. Oh, so there is charging then.
Yeah,
that, won't it?
yeah. It's just a conversation piece, isn't it? It will people be in the car saying to each other, oh yeah, look at that, because it's when you know about charging and you see things and you point it out to people that you're with, and they're like, oh, I didn't realise that was there, or I didn't know that, you know, these things existed. I didn't know what that was. Yeah. Didn't know what that was. So yeah, I think that sort of thing is kind of transformational, and that's what we need for the next set of EV drivers, because it will just give so much more confidence.
And it's funny when you were saying about the fact that, you know, a lot of future drivers could potentially people who are not particularly interested in cars. Sorry, I'll tell you why I'm chuckling in a second, but not interested in cars, but actually would be interested in the environment. My husband, we've had the REV for 2 years. I'm the one who drives it the most, and he couldn't give a monkeys about cars. It's just not him. He's, you know, I'm kind of more of the I do love my cars. You know, my brother, I had two brothers, and they were so much older than me. So when they used to turn up, and my brother, I remember one of my brothers, he had an MGB GT, a bright yellow one. We called it the Little Yellow Chicken, you know, and stuff like that. That was what I grew up with. And they'd come round and see my dad, and we'd all go out for a ride in their new car. So that was my side of things, whereas Rich, my husband, just could not give a monkeys as long as it goes, like you're saying, from A to B, and it's, you know, it's not giving off any emissions. He's a professor of climate science, so, you know, he doesn't want to be doing that anyway. But what also I was going to say was, the one good thing about EVs is you can't put the wrong fuel type in it, can you? You know, you can't. It's not a petrol or a diesel choice. It's not like highly, you know, like 4++ electricity or anything like that. You know, it's got little gold leaf in it. There's none of that. So that's got to be a Brucey bonus as well, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Can you imagine there'll be so many less cars that actually? Because I don't know what the percentage is. I'm sure the AA would be able to tell us, but.
It's really, really small, isn't it? And it's been reducing consistently in terms of the number of breakdowns that are due to running out of charge. It's really small.
Yeah, but like I say, you're going to also have that data on the people who are putting diesel in the petrol car or vice versa.
Yes.
You know, even though the nozzles are supposed to actually stop you from doing that, but they really don't, do they?
No, I remember I listened to one of the podcasts. I think it's Kirsty from the AA, and she was saying that there's still they still run the service of people having to go and swap the fuel over and sort that out. That's still a service they're having to run at the moment. So, you know, that's never going away until there are no more wet fuel.
Because there will always be
things out there
that does it, but like I say, you move to electric, you're not going to put the wrong fuel type.
No, you're not.
You might not work out what a 7 or 11 or a 22 or a 50 or 150 kilowatt charger might look like to start off with, but at least you know you might get that a little bit kind of confused. But other than that, it's, you know, it should be okay, really, shouldn't it?
Yeah. But I think that's the importance of the education, and that's the piece like we try and help with. We've got all the guides, as well as, you know, everything that we're supporting on the media with. But it's about that education and helping people to understand actually what are these different use cases, how does this all come together, what are your choices, what are you looking for. Yeah, so it's all kind of intertwined, I think.
Yeah, and like you said about kind of on the utilisation piece, the charging networks do need to know, don't they, about their, you know, so they've obviously built their KPIs on, you know, what their expected utilisation is, but I suppose what you can give is the right, this is what was expected, but we're kind of here, or they're compared to these guys, and plus or minus, because there could be over, you know, that you higher utilisation or lower, but they need to know all this stuff, don't they, really?
Yeah, yeah. It's getting more and more important as the networks are getting bigger, and therefore they've got more assets out there that they're having to manage and understand, okay, which are performing well, which aren't performing well, what can we do to improve that performance. So it's that constant tracking and understanding what's going on, and how does that influence future investment. So, you know, for example, GridServe down in Exeter went from 12 devices to 36 because they could see from the data how that utilization was tracking, and when it was actually reaching a point that made that next decision to actually, we need to increase and put another 12 in, and then another 12, and it's kind of that forward planning, but then executing as your kind of growth goes along. So we're trying to help people as they build all that out, and really sort of work on those models for how they expand their own networks and where they choose to do that. And then think about that wider picture, because they've got all their own data, but it's that wider picture of actually what else could we be doing, and what are other people doing, and what does the market look like overall, and how do we perform against that.
No, that's really good, and just being able to provide enough insights to organisations like GridServe so that they can look at those, because, you know, you've got a couple of things, haven't you, here? You've got the number of assets that you need to put in the ground, like you say, to kind of keep up with the footfall. But you don't want to be putting them in too early, you know. But you also don't want queues as well, because you don't want anybody going, oh, look at Exeter Services, look at the queues there, and blah, 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 and all that. Because again, that's just the misinformation and like jungle drums getting out there. So you know, it's providing that level of information to people, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what's such a hard balance for the CPOs now, is how do they manage that between peak and off-peak times, and what can they do to drive more utilisation at times where it's quieter versus when there are busier times. How do they then manage that? So yeah, there's an awful lot going on there, and it's only going to get more complex, I think, and the stakes kind of get higher on that as well.
So what would you like to see improve? What would you like to see improve in how the industry is using insights and data compared to what's been, you know? Because I'm sure you're getting asked to bring, you know, provide all sorts of information for people. But what would you like to see, you know, kind of change or organisations start asking for?
I think it's because it's you know, a new industry, so I think it's starting, and the kind of the open data piece is starting to help fuel that. But starting to understand more about competitive positioning, and how competitive data can be used to help develop a better service all round. So I think that's quite important, and I think further forwards as well. At the moment, CPOs are very, very focused on their own reliability and thinking purely about their own reliability. I think understanding actually how do you sit in a marketplace on that, and actually where are people doing it particularly well, what can you learn from that, what have you done really well that then you can kind of roll out and push forwards with. So I think there's that piece as well. And then I think further into the future there's also going to be some really interesting stuff around pricing, when all the prices start to get more flexible and people are tweaking their prices and to try and help drive utilisation at different times of day to different locations and with different offers. So there's a little bit that goes on now, but I think in the future that will be a more interesting kind of marketplace on that. And it will be really interesting to see how that impacts EV drivers when, you know, they're not making a decision. They've gone from making a decision on, well, that's probably my only option of where I could go and charge, to actually I've got several options. What am I going to choose and what am I basing that decision on? And obviously pricing will impact that, reliability will impact that, the availability of whether there's enough capacity at different sites will impact that, the overall brand experience and people trusting certain brands and preferring them over others. All those things together will really kind of come to play. But I think that's a little bit further down the line. We're kind of on that journey, I think.
So, and I know you've got to head in a few minutes. I'm gonna ask you two more questions. First one is, if you could offer one piece of advice when it comes to insight-led decision making, what would that be?
Ask the right questions. I think really think through what questions do you need to ask of the data to help you make a better decision, and then find the data that will help you answer those questions.
And final little question. This is about your own driving experiences. So, what if you could sum up what your own driving experiences and as an EV driver was, you know, what your overall experience has been, and whether you've had any favourite places that you've charged at, or good experiences or little pet peeves, what would that be in a little short soundbite?
I think the main thing is when you do get to a charger, being able to pay easily. I think that's so important. So whether that's being able to use contactless or being able to access through roaming, I think those two things are kind of, you know, that's what you need. You want to reduce the number of apps. You might have apps for some favourites, but you want to reduce those really. So you just want to be able to either get your card out, either your contactless card, or whether it's a Zapmap card, charge card, or whether it's using the app to pay. But you just want to be able to do either a payment via roaming or contactless and not be faffing about.
I like that. I was going to say that.
That's the northern. Yeah, the northerner in me. I can't be faffing about.
I know.
I've no time. I'm always on the clock.
Well, you've got two small children, hence the reason why we've got to finish now, because you've got two small children to go and get. So, Jade, look, on that note, I'm going to say it's been really, you know what we're going to say, don't you? It's been really insightful. I couldn't not. I'm so sorry. It has. It's been really, really interesting, and just I could probably sit and talk to you more about this, so much more, especially around customer experience and stuff like that. But I'm going to say thank you, because I'll bring you back on another time. We can carry on chatting about that when there are.
Well, maybe we'll actually get time to talk to each other at an event next time, rather than just waving and running past.
Exactly. I'm hoping we will be able to, because that'd be fantastic. But listen, you know, just thank you ever so much for your time. 2 little children to go and get. So yeah. Thank you. And to everybody, I'm just going to say, I will share, you know, kind of Jade's details in the show notes and everything. And just thank you for everything that you've said today, Jade. It's been brilliant. Everybody else, please like, subscribe, share, all of the wonderful stuff. Check out our podcast page on LinkedIn and just share it with people. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, Jade. Bye. Thanks for watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you're a charge point operator, local authority or stakeholder in EV charging, I'd love to talk to you about our Charge Point Evolution framework. It's designed to help you create a seamless EV driver journey, boost utilisation and maximise your return on investment. Alternatively, if you know someone who'd be a great podcast guest or might be interested in sponsoring an episode, you can email me on liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. Thanks again for watching.